I'm in Northwest Cape Coral today. This is February. Northwest Cape Coral is a fairly large section of the Cape. It basically stretches from Santa Barbara Boulevard heading west all the way over to Burntstone Road, and it's anything north of Hancock Bridge. Now the one thing about the Northwest is you do have a lot of undeveloped land out here, and it continues to get built on, and this street is a pretty good example of that right here, where we can see we've got new house here on the right, we've got a lot of lots in front of us and to the side where there's nothing here at all. But as you walk down the street, you'll find there is a lot of new builds going on. Like there's a house here to the left you can see that's getting built on. This is a saltwater home right here. Now the Northwest does have a combination of properties. You have off-water like you see on the right, and what you do on the left. But there are two different types of waterfront you need to consider. And now if you're a serious boater and you want to get out into the Gulf, then basically you need to make sure you're on a saltwater canal, not a freshwater. Because saltwater means you can get out into the Gulf of Mexico, you can pretty much go anywhere you want if you wanted, but freshwater is landlocked. But there is a big difference in price between the price of a freshwater home and a landlocked home as well. So as I walk down the street, as I said, this is a pretty good example of a Northwest address. As you can see, that the houses here are a lot newer than what you'll see in other areas of Cape Coral. Like the southeast section is predominantly a mixture of older homes, but most definitely, as you can see here, you get some fairly good sized new homes too. The other thing you got to consider too is when you, particularly if you're buying waterfront, you need to look. An important thing, a couple of things on the canals, obviously, is how big of a boat you're going to have. For example, if you're going to have something that's typically over maybe 30 odd feet that has like a 9-foot draft, needs a 9-foot clearance, sorry, you need to make sure it doesn't have a bridge. So the waterfront can get pretty complicated. So you've got landlocked freshwater, doesn't go anywhere. Though in the Northwest, there is a pretty good sized canal system in the Northwest that goes to small lakes, but obviously somebody's definition of a lake may not be what you think we have lakes here. You may think, well, it's just a pond, but they do consider it to be a lake on here. So you also have to consider access. How quickly does it take you to get out to the this actually gets you out into Port Charlotte, Mount Lachey area, which is the Back Bay area, which is a good place to go ahead and fish from. Now the one thing about the Northwest is the canals do tend to be a lot wider than other areas, and I'll show you an example of that on some others as well. So this is a lot that's currently listed for sale. It does lack a seawall, so you're going to have to put a seawall in here. The other thing you have to consider too as well, and this is an important factor, is are the mangroves in the water on the lot. If there is, that's going to seriously delay your time to build out here, because basically you have to reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers, have to come out, inspect it, issue a permit, and then there's a mangrove bank where you have to pay into in order to get the mangroves removed, because it is a protected species, so you can't just simply rip them out. And sometimes it's not always that easy to tell if that's the case or not. However, further investigation on this particular lot right here, there is a section here that unfortunately does have mangroves, because I did have a buyer for this lot that was given some thought, because there's actually 2 building sites on here, and they can build obviously more than one property on here at some point in time. But the issue is that we've got right here is the fact that there are mangroves. So I tend to, if I'm looking in the Northwest, try and focus on something that has a seawall in already to avoid that. So this is just one area, gives you a typical example of what we see in the North. This is another interesting street in the Northwest. What's interesting is there's a lot of new builds on this particular one right here. The other thing too is that both sides of the street are on the water as well. So this is a really nice location right here. So this particular property in question is a vacant lot that's listed for sale. Now again, this is direct access, no bridge on this one. The one thing about this is that we are on what's called the spreader waterway. There's nothing to be built on the other side over here. And this is where all of the boats with the canals behind will feed into this main canal system, and then they will head south. That's what they'll do, and go out through the Mount Lachey area. Now this particular one does have a seawall already. Quite a nice view you can see, and that's why people like to be out here, is because of the view, obviously. And you said you are on the water as well. And this is what we call direct access. And what direct access means that there are no bridges out here on this one. The other thing too, right now, this area is all on well and septic. However, in 2025, they will get an assessment for city water and sewer. So that means they'll tear up the road, bring city water and sewer in. Every property will get assessed. That is what will happen. And then you have to, once it's completed, hook up into the city water and sewer. So you'll have to do that. So as you can see, look, as I walk down this road a little bit, you'll be able to see the new construction on these homes. So I said the one thing about the Northwest is you won't get really, there are probably some older homes in here, but there aren't many of them. So pretty much everything else you get here is going to be new, as you can see. But this is fairly typical of what we're looking at and seeing going on in the Northwest right now. And as you can see, there's still quite a lot of vacant properties up here. There are a number of them for sale on this street. So that's an example. But I'm going to show you another location a little bit further north that is going to be on well and septic for some time, probably till 2040. But that is a really nice view, southern exposure. It's a big lot, so I'll just show you where that is. Then we'll look at some of the freshwater areas and just the general areas as well. So I'm back in the Northwest, and I just want to show you what I mean by getting a really wide water view. This is an example of one of the canals out here in Cape Coral. So this is Northwest, and this is an example of the kind of view you can get. So this is a big canal. It's a really wide canal, as you can see right here. So that's one thing that makes the Northwest somewhat different from areas of the Southwest, Southeast. It's just the canals, some of them are really, really big, and you almost get like a mini lake. But as you look around, you get some pretty nice homes being built front and stuff. So again, this is typical of what you see in the Northwest, and that's why people like it up here, as the canals are just so much wider. Now there are others that aren't quite so wide, but this is just a good example to consider. So we're still in the Northwest Cape Coral, and again, this is what I want to show you by way, if you're considering building or buying out here, is this the sort of view you get in the Northwest. Now this particular section of Cape Coral here, this Northwest section, is not due to get city water and sewer probably till at least 2040. So everything out here will be on well and septic. But what makes this so nice is just the views that you get, the really wide water views. Now again, this is what we call direct access. So there's no bridge here to get out. But this is a spread of waterway. This is considered one of the lakes. You go south on there and move your way around. But one side of the street is waterfront, the other one is not. Again, as you can see, there's quite a bit of vacant land out here. The one disadvantage of being out here is you're not really close to anything. So if you need to go to Publix grocery store, you are probably a good 15-20 minutes away, depending where you are, and same for restaurants. But the nice thing is you do have these really great water views. So let me just show you another part of the street, and you'll be able to see that in another section. Let me walk down it right here. So let me show you that as I walk down the street here. Walk down the street here, there's a really big open lot ahead of me, which at some point in time somebody will build on that. And that could be a year, could be 10, 20 years, could be never, you just don't know. But every one of these lots somebody does own, and they can own them. I have people, customers that own property, Australia, Israel, all over the world, that own lots and stuff. But I said the nice thing about this, as you can see, is the really long water views. There aren't really many places in Florida, or really anywhere, you can get that. But that's what makes the Northwest so nice, and that's why it's really building a lot of build going on here, as you can see, just because it's a nice area to be at. But you're on well and septic in this section, you know, awesome distance from anything. I'm going to show you an area next now where the 7 islands are going in. That's a big development being talked about. I think that property is due to close in the next couple months, and then we'll look at some canals that are not direct access. Okay, so there's not really a whole lot to see here, but I'll just give you an idea of where the 7 islands are. So this is Old Burnstow Road right here, and then one side of it is the 7 islands. So this is where we have a group of 7 islands that are due for future development, and probably in 5 years from now this will look vastly different than it does. But this is a corner, one of the islands right here to the left, you can see just over here, and this is one here. So there's 1, 2 islands right here. So the plan is that be able to boat, which you can't boat in this area anyway, but you'll be able to have a dock and other things too. And I'll show you a picture of potentially what that should look like. Now, there is a particular company that's in the process of buying that out to be able to develop that. I think they've actually agreed to a particular plan that will work. And I think that is due to close on this property in the early part of 2024, which we're into February right now, so it should be relatively soon if it's not happened. So right now it's not really a whole lot to see, but this gives you an idea of where it is, the location, that sort of thing. It's definitely good. I like the idea of being able to have somewhere they can have restaurants and go eat and that sort of thing, because that is generally lacking in this area. There are a couple of parks here. There's one a bit further south from this area. There's a new one that's just broke down ground further north. I'll do a video about the parks another day, but I'm just going to show you some of the saltwater canals now that are behind bridges, just give you an idea that. So like I said, we're still in the northwest part of Cape Coral. This time though, the canal we're going to take a look at real quick here is behind a bridge. So again, you have to look at how big your boat is, how much clearance you need out of the water in order to get out into the spreader and under that bridge. So sometimes it's good to look at what some of the neighbors have. That will give you an idea. But as you can see on this one, the canal aren't always quite as wide, but again, you still get nice property. You got a new one being built across the street, a nice canal system to look down. Now the difference in price can be considerable. You could probably pay $100,000 less to be able to have a property. There still is Gulf access, but you have to go under a bridge to get under it. But again, you still have new homes being built in the area. You can see one across the street over there, the one that was behind me. There's a lot over here where they're getting ready to start build, or they are starting to build. So again, this area will eventually fill out, but it just gives you an idea as to what you're looking at. So let's go look at some of the freshwater areas, give you an idea on that. All right, so we are on the northwest again. And what I mentioned, we take a look at some of the freshwater canals, just give you an idea. As you can see, obviously people build new homes on, as you're seeing right here. But this is fairly typical of the northwest. As you're seeing right here, there's a lot of properties that aren't developed. Obviously today is kind of trash day, but let's go out and we'll just take a look at one of the canals. I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. But again, this is a typical street. Some streets are going to be more built than others that you go on, but there's potential of a lot more properties built out here. Now, on the freshwater canals, you do not have to put in a seawall, but most people do because it just looks better, cleans it up. Now, this one is off of a small lake that you can see coming to the right here, but the freshwater are landlocked. In fact, this particular property right here, just an example, does not have a seawall in it. And now a seawall on saltwater you have to put in, but on freshwater you don't. So it would save some money by not doing that. And if you want a kayak, it's much easier to launch a kayak. But this is fairly typical of what a freshwater canal will look like. You can have a small boat, do some fishing in here, but it's not going to get you out to the Gulf of Mexico. These are landlocked, and it's quite a bit less. I just put a freshwater lot under contract for $40,000 in this general neighborhood, but a saltwater will cost you a whole lot more money than that. But again, if you just went out with waterfront and just have a bit of space around you, and this is something to consider, is what you see right here. And some canals are going to be wider than others. This is a fairly wide one with a good view.